Hey everybody, it's April Henry back for my 22nd Facebook Live. I'm doing them every day at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I am putting them all up on my website, aprilhenry.com, and my YouTube channel, which is also called April Henry. Um, my plan is to do these until I run out of topics. Hey, Karen. I am not wearing any makeup. I am wearing, I don't know if you guys can see it, what looks like a leopard print shirt, but is actually little tiny Ruth Bader Ginsburg heads. The reason I'm not wearing any makeup is I just got back from Costco, which was crazy. I went during the vulnerable person hours because I'm 61, and I showed up at 7:30 and it opened at 8. And there was already a long line wrapping around two sides of the building. Everybody was in masks, and it turns out that if you put me in a Costco during a pandemic, my hoarding instinct comes out. I grew up real poor. Even my brother probably doesn't remember exactly how poor we grew up, but there were times that in fact, most of the time when I was growing up, the only cans you would find in the cupboard was what we were going to eat that week. There was no extra cans, there was no extra food, plenty of room in our refrigerator. You could easily find things, not like mine right now, which was like a giant game of Jenga, and I'd think I was uh, winning the game, and then I'd realize there was still like some giant bag of spinach that I needed to find room for. So, yes, Karen, I did wear a mask at Costco because they made you wear one. They were giving them out to people who did not have them, but I had mine, which I found in the bathroom like a month ago, and I think I wore it to see someone who was very sick one time in the hospital, or I don't actually remember where I got it from. Um, so anyway, now I have way too much food because I seem to have reverted to my hoarder status. When we first started having any money at all, we got a set of Rubbermaid shelves, and I would just go to town. If cereal was on sale, I'd buy like 8 boxes um, because I just didn't like that feeling of not having food around, and it made me feel safe to have food. And I'm back there again. Anyway, today I'm going to be talking about show versus tell. Tomorrow I'm going to be talking about scenes and sequels. So we have all heard the phrase show, don't tell, but we may not know what it means or how to do it. It's one of those things that seems hard to grasp and even harder to get down on paper. However, there are a few tricks that could help you. Um, First of all, you need to know the difference between telling and showing. Telling is abstract. It's passive, and it doesn't really involve the reader. It slows down your pacing, takes away your action, and pulls your reader out of the story. Showing, however, is concrete. It creates mental images that bring your story to life. And when you hear about writing that is vivid or evocative or strong, they're usually saying there's plenty of showing in it. So showing encourages your readers um, to participate in the story. Instead of reading about someone who's afraid about being on a high ladder, you'll actually feel like you're on the edge of the roof with the edge pressing into your belly, and you're the one standing on the ladder. Of course, telling is also useful. It's great for transitions. If you describe how one character gets from one scene to another in any detail, it would be super boring. So that's when you might just summarize it and tell it. Um, However, if you're going to decide which way to go, I would have more showing than I would have telling. You can always pull back and rewrite it. So, um, don't think you can add a lot of adjectives and think that it's showing. I've heard somebody say once, we don't want the color of the sofa, we want the roar of the tiger behind the sofa. So, and that was before Tiger King. Um, so a long time ago, I was working on a manuscript for a children's chapter book. It did not sell. And here was one of the sentences from it. My reading buddy, Melissa, started jumping up and down and screaming about how she hated fifth grade boys. And you know why? One of the reasons that didn't sell? That was totally telling. It's summarizing. It's not specific. It feels kind of past tensey, like I'm relating to you something that already happened and isn't important. Even if a book is written in past tense, it should still feel immediate. So when I was working on that book, I rewrote it to a scream cut through the noise. It was Melissa. Her face was red and her hands were clenched into fists. She started jumping up and down, and with each breath, she screamed just one word: I hate boys. It's all your fault. Showing lets readers draw their own conclusions. You could say that a man was ugly, or you could describe him in detail without ever using the word ugly, and people will figure out that he is ugly or angry or beautiful without you having to tell them. Readers are intelligent and they like to draw their own conclusions. Um, so let's see. Another thing that keeps me from identifying with the characters if I am not experiencing their emotions myself, and this is again telling versus showing. Um, there is Cheryl, I can't remember her last name. She's a editor, and she's also she has some books about writing. Here's an example that she gave in one of her books. After my dachshund, the Pipster, died, I felt so sad. Well, of course she felt sad. So she rewrote it to show what it would be like if you had more showing versus telling. After the Pipster died, I curled up on my bed with my other dachshunds, the Squeakster, the Yapster, and Long John Silver, who licked the tears from my face with their tiny, scratchy tongues. And then she says this is actually an example of something else she doesn't like, which is when you start thinking you're so clever, like naming your dogs cool names like the Pipster and the Squeakster, that you lose track of where the focus of this passage should be, which is about the sadness this girl is feeling. So there are several signs to look for to tell if you've been telling. If you have a lot of adverbs, those words that end in ly, you are such a jerk, he said angrily, that is telling, it's not showing. Um, if you name the emotion, he was impatient, he was afraid, you're probably telling. If you look at, you have a lot of to be forms and of verbs. Am, is, are, was being, will have been, could have been. The room was perfect. That is an example of showing, telling, not showing. So one way to get past constantly telling things is to watch TV with the sound off. I've mentioned this before, but everything on TV is visual, and they don't have a narrator that can tell you things. So how do you know that someone is upset or angry or frustrated? Watch TV, watch movies, and write down the facial expressions, the movements, the gestures, and then you can use these with your own characters. Another way to make your book much more showing versus telling is to use sensory details. There's a great book called Writing Fiction by Janet Burroway. It's used in classrooms. It's a heavy paperback. I don't know how they make it so heavy. And it also costs a ton of money. So I buy a used copy of an older version because it doesn't change that much from version to version. So she talks about putting yourself in the mind of your character and focusing on this setting. What are the sounds you hear in this place? What's the most distant sound you could hear if you were really paying attention? What smells do you associate with the place? What are you wearing? How does it feel against your skin? What can you touch, not just with your fingertips, but with your whole body, like the small of your back? What can you taste? What colors do you associate with this place? And finally, what emotions does this place evoke in you? So those are some ideas of how you can move from telling to showing, which is usually the stronger writing. And tomorrow I'm going to be back talking about scenes and sequels, and I'll wear makeup tomorrow, and I will not be so flustered from my Costco experience. So you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow.